All right, friends, welcome to another episode of Passion, Purpose, Profit. I have Dr. Ratu on with me today. So, Dr. Mini and I connected a few weeks ago. She put out a post in a Facebook group about wanting to connect with people in the space of health and wellness, I think it was in meditation, nervous system, and she got flooded and went viral in a way that I've never post, not only in that group, but maybe any Facebook post. And there was hundreds of comments and people were to connect. And I said, you know what? I'm going to shoot my shot. I really want to connect with her. There's so much that I'm fascinated by in what you do. There's so many synchronicities and things that we do similar. I'm super excited that for some reason you found my comment, you said yes, we jumped on a little call, and now we're getting to do this interview. So first of all, thank you so much for jumping on. Really appreciate you and really appreciate the work that you do.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely. I told you right before we got on, this is a selfish one, ladies and gentlemen. I am fascinated by what she's got going on, and I'm really interested in learning. So the first question that I ask everybody, a lot of us in the health and wellness journey, in the space of wanting to help others, many of us have gone through some kind of major challenge, major difficulty, and that actually is usually a springboard for most of the people that I've interviewed into the work they do and how they show up in the world. So would you indulge us? Tell us about a major challenge that you've been able to overcome, personal, professional, or both.
Absolutely. So I have been, becoming a psychologist is a very long journey. It was 12 years of school, and I loved school. I enjoyed everything that I was learning. And at the same time, I was working a lot. I just kind of became this obsessive workaholic. And part of that was, as I learned later, was because of my schemas, the things that I learned about myself and how I started to believe that I need to show up in order to for love, for belonging, for connection. And so my personal schemas, including like self-sacrifice, perfectionism, started showing up in my work. And so with that, I started to experience pretty severe burnout. And I was aware of it, and I was doing all the things that I thought I should be. I was weight training, going to yoga, trying to sleep, but honestly, my sleep was not great because even when I was sleeping, I was dreaming about my papers or my patients, and it was a struggle, and it felt very separate, like I have to do these things on my own time when it comes to self-care, the gym, yoga, whatever else we're supposed to be doing, and for our own time. And then when I was working in the hospital settings, it's very demanding. Working so many hours, eating at your desk. And there was like such a mismatch, and my nervous system felt it. And I knew that there was more and something could be better. I tried my best to bring in what I was learning through yoga and meditation into the hospital. So that was great that the hospitals I was working at were receptive to those practices, but it still felt very siloed and very much like not a part of the clinical work that I wanted to actually teach. And so I started learning more about, how yoga, meditation, weight training, all of these things that I was doing are actually interventions in of themselves for what I was experiencing. And so why are we not talking about that in the hospital, in the clinic, in these institutions that I was working with? And so that's what really gave rise to the work that I do today. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, that was because I hit like a breaking point. I was extremely burned out. I didn't like how I was showing up. I'm usually such a calm, chill person, but I was just like irritable all the time, just feeling unsatisfied with life and feeling like nothing was good enough and just feeling wired all the time, So that's really what sparked this change.
I love that. I think, well, not that you experienced that, but the fact that you found a way to integrate the tools that you already had, but understanding the mechanism of how they were going to take you from where you were to where you wanted to go, right? I think a lot of people look at yoga, meditation, weight training, as something that kind of check off, right, their list, right, of like, these are the things I'm supposed to do. but then it's enigmatic because people feel like, oh, I still don't feel good. Why? And then sometimes they'll even add more things, right? Then I got to journal, then I got to do this. And I tell this story where I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I would meditate for 2.5 hours, and then I would journal, and then I would ground myself in the grass, and I would cold plunge, and I would walk it for an hour. And then like by 10:30, I was exhausted, and I literally felt like more stressed out than I felt stress relieved, right? So we do have to take these systems and kind of apply them into ways that can actually like work for us and then for people. And that's actually the impetus for the podcast. It's like, you know, there's the passion piece, right? You find that something's not working or something could be working better, right? And so you become a passionate learner of how to essentially execute that. And then the purpose is how you can kind of deliver it to other people and then profit, because we have to figure out a way to sort of monetize it. So I'm curious of like in that struggle and then distilling it down to a program or a way that worked for you. How has that like now impacted your work? Because there's an MD next to your name, right? So you have this classical training and background, but then you're kind of dabbling in the woo a little bit, right? It's yoga, it's breathwork, it's meditation, other things like that. So how have you built an ecosystem where all these kind of function together to now, you know, the business that you're running? How does that work with your people and your clients?
Yes, so I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a psychologist, just to clear that. I'm a PsyD, not an MD. And
Thank you for that.
But the work, I think it was through just my own practice. I was learning more. I was digging more into the research about what these interventions do to the brain, to the nervous system when we're practicing these skills. And I started teaching that to the clients that were right in front of me. And so I started advocating for movement, for breath work. I was teaching meditation in the sessions if they were open to it. And even in groups, I was working a lot with chronic pain patients. So I started teaching yoga in the hospital, integrating that into what I was already doing. And so that helped to give rise to the interest, and I saw that people wanted to learn more. And it also sparked my own curiosity, like what else can we practice? What else can we do? And how can we tie it into the work that I was doing with trauma, stress, anxiety, and also pain? And because a lot of those go hand in hand, you know, people have these comorbidities, we call when they have multiple diagnoses. And so a lot of times people that have chronic pain, there's a high crossover with trauma and anxiety. And so I was just learning more about through research on the symptoms of trauma, stress, and anxiety, and then the research that was emerging in yoga science and contemplative practices, how that helps to mitigate the effects of trauma and stress in the nervous system.
Right. And I feel like
did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. Well, you did a good job pivoting me off of misdiagnosing you as an MD and then bringing me back. So I really appreciate that part. But then, yeah, I think it's really cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not in this setting, but it feels like two worlds that used to be kind of separate are now merging together, right? I think I'm a huge Joe Dispenza fan. I've been to a bunch of his retreats, and I've worked with his group out of UCSD with the work they've done around meditation and even how it affects things like COVID. And, you know, the science is now catching up to, I think, what the yogis and the mystics, we would say, knew, you know, 3,000 to 4,000 years ago. And I love being able to give people the science, because I think it just cuts through the noise. There's no conjecture, there's no dogma. It's like, it's more sustainable, it's more approachable for people, right? And have you found that to be the case in the people that you work with, where now if you're able to really infuse, like you said, the neuroscience and the nervous system kind of first approach, that people kind of lean in more and are able to like adopt this as real rather than kind of like woo or pseudoscience?
100%. And I think that's why it's so fascinating to be able to present their current data and their current research to really prove what the yogis have been saying for millennia. And so part of that is just showing, you know, okay, today we can see it in an fMRI, but the framework is almost exact on some of the neuroscience frameworks. So I actually present the data side by side. Like for example, what we call the 3 gunas are like the 3 nervous system states. So the 3 nervous system states, according to polyvagal theory, are if somebody is experiencing stress or burnout or a threat in their environment, they can go into fight or flight, which is a sympathetic nervous system state, or dorsal vagal state, which is when somebody goes into freeze or overwhelmed, they're feeling stuck, in shame and hopeless, or in fawn, which is appeasing and people pleasing and just trying to not ruffle feathers. And that's usually how we manage conflict and stress. And the yogis call these the gunas, so that we call it the different the states. So rajasic is like that sympathetic nervous system state when you're in fight or flight. Tamasic is when you're slow and sluggish and overwhelmed. And then we have what we call the ventral vagal system. And that's when the nervous system is experiencing grounding, feeling socially connected. It's feeling safe in its body. And in yoga, we call this sattvic. And it's exactly the same. It's just different language. So it's really exciting to teach, for me, because yoga has been a fascination of my own personal journey for a long time, and to now show that the science today can show what's happening through an fMRI. What the yogis have been saying for all these years.
I'm fanboying so hard right now because it's been a while since I've dusted off. It's been a year since I did my yoga teacher trainings, but I never thought about the parallel of those two things, right? Like the states of the nervous system as it relates to the gunas is that's incredible. So I'm just going to take a moment with that. That's fantastic. I'm wondering if you've had any big moments either working with people or in the research that maybe kind of like mystified you or blew you away, or was kind of like a oh my god moment of like a realization that this is real. Have you had any of those, or have you uncovered anything that really kind of even shocked you?
I think it's surprising to people when they see that this is real, when they see the science behind it, because it helps them. I think we all already know intuitively that these things work, like meditation, breathwork, yoga. When we're doing it, we always walk out of the studio, the room, wherever we're at, feeling better. We're feeling more grounded. We're feeling more connected, but we don't know why. And so I think a lot of times people want to have a reason and to say, like, I know exactly what's happening in my brain, in my nervous system when I'm practicing these things. It does help to solidify the buy-in, but I think even with the practice itself, because if somebody just tells you to do something, like your doctor tells you, yeah, you should go do yoga, go work out, it's like, okay, yeah, I know these things are good for me, but if they're thoroughly explaining what's exactly happening in your brain when you're practicing meditation, your amygdala reactivity slows down, the cortex thickens, you're able to think. That's why you're able to feel more grounded and think more clearly. You're more empathetic. So that if you see the structural and functional changes or understand those, then it just makes it that much more. I think just when you're doing the practice, like at least for me, I want to know why, why I'm doing something all the time. So for the people who are very curious and, or like to question everything or a little bit cynical, there's healthy cynicism too. I think it is a breakthrough for them to see, like, wow, this is actually, I understand why it's working.
Yeah, I think you and I are very similar. In the communities that we work with are very like high achieving, like very like front brain kind of people, type A people a lot. And they can do a lot in like what we'd call three-dimensional reality or like out in the real world, but it makes it harder for them, I think, to really endorse or to accept practices that don't have like a quantitative element to it, right? So now that the research is catching up again, I think people can lean in a little more. I know I've seen crazy transformations in people in terms of, I've looked at brain scans when we did research at UCSD. I've seen people get up out of wheelchairs. Like I've seen things that you would have once thought were impossible be possible. And I think that's one of the fascinations with the work that we get to do, is that you really see firsthand, right, somebody's life change in such a profound way. I'm curious, I would like to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the business side of things, because, it's I think easy for a lot of us that are in the health and wellness and the self-development and wanting to help people, space, to lean into that part, right? That part is usually the easy part because we're that way by nature. I think most of us as human beings, our empathy runs really deep. But then there becomes a point where you have to figure out, how to build a business and how to sustain a business. And,
Right.
thinking of even people as clients, right, in the self-development or help space is a little bit stickier, ickier. It has been, at least for me
Mhm.
at times, right? Even asking for what you're worth. Tell me a little bit about kind of how you've been able to build and sustain a business, and maybe what were some of kind of the things that were challenging in that space for you?
Yeah, and that's a great question because I think early on, especially, if you're like a true yogi, you want to make this accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Yoga is for everyone. It's not only for the elite people who can afford, $250 a month memberships in a studio. It should be open access to everyone. So for me, I think the programs that I've created is, I do a lot of free master classes and free practices, but
Mm,
then the people who want to go deeper and want to learn more about the cognitive behavioral aspect of it, their schemas, and do assessments, then that's where we can do deeper work. And that's where my charges are a little bit higher, right? The fees, because there's more of an investment. And I always invite people in that way. I always remind them that this is an investment. And what I've learned is that when people invest more in themselves, even whether in any way, they're going to show up differently. So the clients that we're working with, everyone is invested, especially in the groups that I'm working with. I want to make sure everyone is participating. They want to be there. They're excited to be there and to learn, and that
mm,
there's peer support then too, right? They're not just showing up just to go through the motions, that they're actually really invested, that they put in money and time and energy into learning, and it makes me want to provide even more value. So because the work that we're doing is an energy exchange, and I had to work around that too, as far as like, what is money? Money is still, it's a currency, but there's value in the way we're exchanging energy through that money. And so they're compensating me for my time and my resources, but it feels fair. So that, I think
mm,
that's the thing. Like, we want to make sure that it feels fair on both sides, because if you're not charging enough, and you start to build resentment, you start to feel burned out, you feel like you're not getting your needs met. And just in general, we have to feel like there's a balance on both sides, that people are participating and wanting to be there, and showing up, but also that we're not feeling like burned out and overriding our own nervous system's capacity.
I love that so much. I struggle with that before for a long time, where I would price retreats or coaching programs, and I inherently knew like I wasn't charging what I really felt like I was worth, but I cognitively said, well, this is what I think somebody will pay, right? And this goes all the way back to, childhood rejection issues, inadequacy issues. And I've only now, in even the last couple of years, just really unearthed this and given myself permission to really receive fully, right?
Right.
But I can remember, distinctly, and this might shock some people, but I would have like a sale for a retreat, which should be like a joyous celebration, celebratory moment,
Mhm.
right? You get that email, that little ping from Squarespace, hey, somebody just bought your thing. And I just remember the feeling of like the moment of joy, but then the instant zap of like, oh, but that's not enough. Like that they didn't pay
Wow.
enough for it, right? And it was actually more self-harming than it was
Yeah.
good, right? It really was an eroding of my ability to, and it pervade out into relationships and romantic relationships, all these
Sure.
things, right? So you have to get really clear with that. I want to touch on something you said too, and this is a little selfish for me. So it's like I'm trying to navigate putting myself out there in a new sort of way, right? Less of the large scale retreats that I've been doing and more of the interpersonal one to one or even one to just a few work, and playing with the idea of doing like bi-monthly gatherings or ways for people to
Mhm.
just experience me and learn from me, but
Mhm.
a give before an ask, like really putting
Yeah.
good out there in the world. And even this podcast, right, this will be put out in little segments, and it'll be a way for people and us to mix networks and all that kind of stuff. And but I think
Mhm.
there's like a karmic element to that too. I think there's something about the energy of just wanting to put good out in the world, but also being ready to have an ask or have an offer
Mhm.
in place. And I'm wondering if you could just walk me through the process, or like how you built that, or how you decided or came to that conclusion that that was like the right formula for you.
Absolutely. So I think, you made a really good point about, when you're giving, you're also receiving. So there's actually, we know this from altruism research, that when you are the recipient of a gift, yes, it feels good and you feel gratitude, you feel grateful, but the person who has gifted you actually experiences more joy. They're going to feel the effects, their immune system even, feels the benefits. And so because of altruism, like you feel good about yourself, right? When you've helped somebody and you see the joy in their face, you see the gratitude that they have, it feels good, and it just makes you want to give more. And I think that's what happened with me, when I started seeing how people were changing and expressing gratitude. And it was so rewarding for me, where I was like, I want to do more of this. So I started off my private practice just doing one-on-one therapy, and it was great, for a while, but I also felt like I was outgrowing it. And that's when I felt like, okay, I want to teach more, and I want to be more out in the public. And so I started teaching workshops and doing multi-day workshops, and now retreats also, and being out in the community, because when you're teaching, you're a student also. I think that I learn the most from my clients and my students. I'm always learning. I come from a Sikh background. I don't know if you heard of Sikh people.
Sure.
Were from Punjab. Sikh means student, and that's part of one of our major philosophies, is that we are all students. We're all here to learn. We're here to be humble, and no one is better than the other. So just because you're the student does not make you submissive or less in authority, that there's equality. And so that is literally the way I do my work, even in my one-on-one. When I'm doing cognitive behavioral therapy, is also very collaborative type of therapy. That's when people invest or are showing up more, because they feel safer, they don't feel judged, they don't feel smaller, and they're giving more as far as like what they're experiencing, so that how to conceptualize what's occurring with them, and you can guide them, through the interventions or whatever treatment plan that you can create for them.
I love that so much. I remember listening to Tony Robbins talk about there's no such thing as unselfish, right? Because even when you give, you receive. And in the quantum model, right, there's always a reciprocating effect of energy rebounding, right, and coming back. And it's hard. I think when we get lost in our own journey and things like bills and payments come up, and you've got to play that game of life too. It's a real challenge for us in the entrepreneur space. But I think if you can stay anchored in the idea, I love two things. I love a lot of things what you said, but the two that really stuck out to me were that when you are teaching, right, you're getting feedback from the people that you're teaching. You are in essence a student, right? And this is a process I've been going through with this pivot to doing more one-to-one, is like going back to the retreat guests that I connected with the most deeply or had the most profound experience, and hey, can you educate me? Like what was it that we did that really had an impact? Or what was the pain point that I solved from you? And let me give you a free hour coaching session. Let me just take you through the process and see if it actually helps and see if it actually works. So I think that's such an invaluable piece of advice. There's no amount of effort is ever wasted, right? In terms of wanting to help, wanting to educate. And I think the other part of that too is, you talked about doing workshops and then eventually retreats. Like, it's about action. It's like about just getting yourself out there and getting reps as a teacher, reps as a coach, reps as a therapist, right? Because that's where you cultivate your voice. And if you're filming, you're, creating content, all this kind of like that, that is just the motion creates emotion, right? It creates stimulation, it creates touch points and all that feedback that's, kind of coming in. So give me the state of the union of you now, because we talked about all these different things that you're doing, but what are you excited about? What are you passionate about? What do you want people to know about how they can access you and your work? And I'm like frothing at the mouth, ready to hear like what it is that I'm like, where can I sign up for something that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome to join. So I have a few things that I'm doing right now. So I'm doing my executive one-on-one coaching, and that's open to everyone. My clients are mostly high functioning, high performing adults that are experiencing burnout. So a lot of they're founders, CEOs, executives, even moms, are, even if they're not working, moms are high functioning, high performers. So I don't want to leave
executives of the household, exactly. Man. They're the CEO of the household.
So a lot more people fit into that than they may realize. And a lot of us, we are meant to lead. We all have a need for autonomy. We all have underlying needs, and autonomy and power are significant needs that we all have. And so sometimes when we're working for somebody or we're going through the motions, we're feeling burnt out. We feel like we don't have a purpose. We don't have something that we're building for ourselves. And so that's what I teach now. I have a 12-week program the 12-week program is called Unstuck Burnout to Breakthrough. And that one is just for women. And so that's where we're coming together once a week for 90 minutes. And that's a group, it's a group format. So there's also peer support where they're learning from each other and normalizing their stories and learning about their schemas and going through more deep work together. The other thing I have is the executive coaching. So that's one-on-one and that's open to everyone. And so that's, I create a specific plan depending on the person's needs. So we go through an extensive intake. So I understand exactly what's going on. But a lot of it, again, is through nervous system regulation, embodiment work. Because when people are stressed or even experience trauma, they may go to a clinician and the clinician is working with their memories, their cognition, things that happened in the past and making meaning, which is significant, it's important, but they're leaving the body completely out of the picture. So people are turning to yoga studios to get that, right? So to say, okay, let me work with somatically with my body, but yoga teachers are not trained to assess and contain, and sometimes they may accidentally re-traumatize a client. And so my work really integrates both sides together because I am, I'm a yoga instructor and a internationally qualified yoga therapist. So for healthcare settings, and then I bring in my work as a psychologist, and I've learned to combine that together into one program. And that's what I do for my individual work, and then also the groups that I teach, and now also the retreats that I'm doing.
I love that so much. I think there's value, like you said, in both, right? Like the cognitive recognition of patterns, traumas, like an understanding of, where it comes from. I also will say anecdotally, like a lot of the folks I've worked with have been in talk therapy for a very long time, and they found elements of it to be useful. I am starting to find just in my own journey and the more people that I interact with, that a lot of times what happens is because they don't have somatics and they don't have integration, they're just kind of replaying the story, and they're actually creating, in some cases, stronger neural pathways and attachments to those things without an outlet of really how to exercise them. And then on the flip side, yes, like, breath work, even yoga, like things that are very embodied practices sometimes leave behind that element of, what is actually going on behind the eyes. And then how are we not only healing the old patterns, traumas, behaviors, but also installing the new sort of software, so to speak, right? Of like, what are the new visions, the new programs? And I think work like yours that brings it all together is so needed. And I think it's going to be on the forefront of how, I think you're a bridge builder. I think it's honestly one of the most beautiful things. And I try to aspire to be that as well, as like where we can learn and integrate from both, that neither is right or wrong or black and white, which you see a lot in a lot of things in our particular country and environment, but that it all has a place at the party, like bring all the kind of parts there together. So I would love to just bounce back to the business side of things one more time. Just to get kind of a sense from you, if like somebody is listening to this, we get a lot of folks that are interested in health and wellness and self-development, but some are either starting an entrepreneur journey. Some have maybe been on an entrepreneur journey and it's stagnant, or it's slipping, or it's failing. What are maybe one or a couple pieces of advice that you would give to somebody who's either starting or stuck in their entrepreneur journey of how to maybe go from the passion to the purpose to the profit? What are some of the things that have like really helped you?
Sure. I would say, you start with one thing that feels attainable. You can lead like a short masterclass for free online, do a webinar. You can start a group, they do a meetup where you're learning from the people that are coming to you and saying that these are my pain points. This is what I'm experiencing. And that's where you can share your skills, your knowledge, and get feedback. Was that enough? And, because sometimes people have follow-up questions, or it doesn't make sense. It makes sense to you, but it's not really clear to them. So it helps you to get better at clarifying your message. And from that, you naturally just build confidence, like you were talking about earlier, through reps, through repetition. That's where neuroplasticity actually happens, is through repetition, through consistency. And so the more you're practicing, the more confident you will feel in your ability to serve. And you may say, okay, this was like one thing that I tried and it was like a small group at a meetup, but now I'm ready for the next thing. I think I want to do an online webinar where I'm going to invite even more people, and you feel ready and you're challenging yourself all the time, because confidence, again, it comes not only through repetition, but obviously through action. So you can't just continue to just think about it. You have to practice. You have to get it wrong. Be okay with failure. It's being okay with mistakes. That's part of the journey of success. Any successful person will tell you that you want to embrace your failure, because those are the times when you learn the most about what you're doing and yourself. And it's this, even building a business is a spiritual journey. You're consistently checking in with your own faith in yourself. Can I continue? Can I do this? Do I really believe in what I'm sharing, in what I'm teaching? Because the other thing about confidence is that it comes from integrity. And if you truly believe you have a message and you have something that's of value that can help people, it doesn't matter if it's just like one person or two people in the beginning, that you're speaking more and you're helping that one person, and eventually, more followers will come. But I would say focus on just providing as much value as you can, even if it's just to that one person.
Love that. There's like, every time you answer something, there's like 6 threads that I want to pull at, and it's like making me go in all these different directions. I'll start last and work back to first. The passion piece, right? I met with a guy the other day who gave me some coaching around, really building out who I was serving and getting really clear. And he said, you really have to think about their life, their pain point, and the thing that you help and solve for them at such a deep level, like such a reverence of wanting to solve and help with that problem. Like, it's the hill you die on, is what he said. And I don't know, that just like hit me right in the heart. It was like, it has to be the thing that you're so passionate, you're so like in need to get this out to people, right, that you can't help but take action. So I love that. And then I literally just filmed an episode before this, and this will be nice if people listening to these back to back, but my buddy Josh grew this company, a cold plunge tub company, to over $20 million in revenue. And then it fell apart, manufacturing issues. He ran into a whole litany of funding issues, difficulties, and it tanked. And he talked about the mirror of the entrepreneur journey to the spiritual journey, how it's like always reflecting you back to yourself, right? It's like such a teacher of like, you have to be really grounded and secure in who you are and how you're putting yourself out there, because and he and I were talking about even failure is not even, and I use air quotes if you're listening, but it's like failure is not even failure if you can just reframe it as learning, right? And then the last little piece that you said that I really love is like, you just got to take some action, and one thing at a time. And this is something I struggle with, is like analysis paralysis. It's like, I'm going to be on 8 different social media channels, and I'm going to launch 3 different things, and I'm going to film this and do that and launch this retreat over here and that retreat. And it's like, it's too much, it's like, especially if you're just getting started, it's like, what can you do to add value, to help, to maybe solve a problem for somebody? And what is just like one clear action step that you can take to start to move that needle, right? To start to bring forward, even if you like are in a full-time job, right? And this is just like starting out as a hobby, like what can you actually start to do, right? To just take some of those steps and just put yourself out there. I love what you said about like, you start 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, and then it becomes a webinar, and then your voice grows, and you continue on that journey. So many good nuggets. I think so many good little pieces of information.
And one thing I just want to say, since you mentioned the word passion, passion comes from the Latin root word passio, which means to suffer, to endure, to undergo. And so originally, passion did not mean excitement or enthusiasm. It's something that you're willing to endure for, something that you care, that moves you deeply enough that you're tolerating discomfort. So a lot of times we're looking for our passion because we think it's supposed to be so fun and joyous all the time and so exciting, but it's hard, to do this work. It's not always fun or exciting, but it's so rewarding that you're willing to continue to keep going for it and to keep working. That's where the consistency becomes natural. It's like you're doing it over and over because you believe in it so much. So you're willing to endure the suffering that comes with it as well.
You're the first person to bring that up on this podcast, and it's so great because part of the reason that I intentionally not, obviously the passion, purpose, profit, it's the nice, triple P, but it really was because passion doesn't always come from, like you said, excitement or joy, right? A lot of people that I interview, and the first question that I always ask is, what was a challenge that you overcame, right? Because typically the way that we kind of find our way, right, for a lot of us is by some kind of big tragedy, big challenge, big difficulty that we first overcome, right? And then we become really proficient at it. And then we go, okay, I just want to take this and give it to somebody else. And I think it's one of the best parts about being a human being, right? It's like, we're not the biggest creatures in the forest. We're not the fastest, the strongest. We don't see the best, hear the best, but we actually learn from each other and we work together in community and harmony, mostly, right?
Right.
At a
Yes.
much higher level than any other animal, right? So it really is about, I love what you said. It's like, what are you willing to suffer and endure through, or what have you had to suffer and endure through, that then you're able to take those nuggets of knowledge and information and just make the world a better place, right?
Right.
If you can just keep that in your windshield, the money, the accolade, whatever it is you want to manifest in addition to that, like, it's all going to come to you. And everybody who's built something great always had chapters of
Right.
struggle and endurance and they don't make Hollywood movies that are like, oh, it was easy in the beginning and then got easier in the middle and it
Yeah.
was easy at the end, right?
Mhm.
Nobody cares
Yeah.
about this story
Yeah.
arc, the hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell is like, you have to be willing to have it kind of suck sometime,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
so I love that so much. So I wanna wrap up on just really touching in on you looking forward. So you obviously have a ton of knowledge, you have a ton of offers, you have a ton of things that you're doing in the world. What is your ideal outcome for your work? And this could be impact, monetary. What
Yeah.
is it that you want to build? What is it that you want to create?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because it's so funny. I just went to a mastermind a couple of weeks ago, and it was mostly men in the room, and so everybody was sharing like their big audacious goal, and they were all numbers. You know, I wanted to hit 10 million in this year or whatever it was, and I think I need to think more about those things, but mine is really to create as much impact as possible, especially for young girls. And education is really where my heart is, because it's really
Mm,
my own education that's given me the freedoms that I have today, the life that I live today, is because of the education that I went back to school. And it's like now I feel like, you know, I've done the work. I have respect in my community, in my family, where people are, they're okay with me living the life that I am, because I came from a pretty conservative Indian background. And so, you know, being single at, you know, a certain age, you know, I don't have kids, and it's like, you know, like people, that's what they think you should be doing to be successful. But today, because of my education and my the work that I do, those things don't matter as much, like when people say those kinds of things. And my family's still very proud of me, where
mm.
otherwise I don't know if they would have felt that way. You know, but I mean, I have a great family, but I'm just, you know, like in our community, there's a lot of respect for people who have education, but a lot of girls do not have access to education. And I'm the first woman in my family to have gone to grad school to be this educated. And I want to be able to give back as much as possible. I got my family together to build a library back in our home village in India, which was really exciting to see that come up. And so I want to continue to invest more in girls' education.
I love that so much. I was just listening to an interview with a very successful coach, and I've been trying to assimilate more of that kind of content, but really looking through the lens of, yes, people that have built high ticket, high monetization capability. But I love so much that, I mean, this is a woman who is doing 50K months pretty easily and was already talking about 100, 250 being very possible for her. And I
Mhm.
believed her. I mean, she had all the conviction in the world. There was no BS in this woman. But she was talking about being able to invest in people and cause it. And she's like, I trust me with that money a lot more than I trust other
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so, you know, it's kind of an old Joe Dispenza adage, but it's like, you have to feel the emotion before the experience. Right. So if
Mhm.
you understand why you're trying to build what you're building or monetize what you're monetizing, right, with a clear vision of why and what you want to build and how you want to make impact in the world, sky's really the limit. So I love that. I love that, you know, that library and the fact that you have a very clear sense of not only who you are, but what you want to build in the world. So I could talk to you for 3 hours. Like I said, this was a selfish one for me. I really enjoyed this so much. So I'll link all your website, your upcoming workshops, Instagram. Is there any other way that people can reach out to you or interact with you that you'd like them to know about?
Yeah, those are the best ways. You can reach out to me on my website, drmini.co, or I'm pretty active on Instagram. I share a lot of content on there, and also upcoming events is all there. On my website, I have a lot of free downloadable resources that you can take a look at, and a free newsletter with a lot of tips every week as well.
Heck yeah, I love that so much. Maybe a workshop collaboration for us in the future.
Sure.
I'd love to get in the arena and see what you do firsthand. But yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for coming on, spending some time with me. And I'm sure folks are going to get a lot out of this in a lot of different ways and areas. I know I did. So thank you again.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.